Feel It Friday is today, and it's Good Friday. Happy Good Friday and Jesus Day. And yeah, today we have Rono and Sierra speaking about sacred unions and communities and common unities. So let's get our first guests, Rono and Sierra.
Well, hello.
Well,
Hey.
hello.
Feeling good on Feel It Friday.
Yep.
Friday. I have my Palo Santo.
Oh, delicious.
And yes, Rono, I think we were talking about my my scarves. I have a lot of supply of scarves. It's my theme now. I think I'm going for scarf.
Yeah, it's a good theme.
Yeah.
I like to look back at themes throughout all the years and be like, oh, that must have been my scarf theme or my ridiculous glasses theme or ridiculous sideburns and like
sideburn theme.
Crazy
sideburn themes.
Crazy like thing going on for a while.
A Rono Tash.
Seemed really cool at the while, but then looking back, it's like, what the hell? I think
so, Rono and Sierra.
Hey.
Hi. Tell us.
Hi.
Tell us. Smoky, witchy.
Oh.
Tell us about yourselves. Who are you? What do you do? What's your vibe? What's your point? Come, share. What?
Well, we're very boring and
We're pointy and anointy.
Pointy and anointy. Yeah, I'm gonna get our Palo Santo as well. Ethically
sourced, of course.
Right.
Well, yes, Rono and Sierra, we have had many incarnations, but we are a huge stand for evolutionary partnership.
Mm-hmm.
And the empowerment of women, particularly. That's really more my camp. Not that Ronald's not. He's totally in the empowerment field for women.
No, I like to empower women too.
But he definitely likes to empower women. Yeah,
they like to empower me too.
But we like to create magical experiences for couples and women, and just couples, and sometimes just women, and sometimes couples and women. It's not what you think, though. Don't anybody think what you're thinking.
Not sexy stuff. Well, I mean,
well,
it's sexy, but
it's not sex.
Just to be clear.
Exactly.
Sexy, but not sex.
Sexy, but not sex. Which is very confusing for a lot of people in this culture. I don't quite understand. But
it's interesting. They think because when couples gather, they're like, oh, is that like a play party and people just having sex with each other? It's like, no, it's just couples hanging out.
So you have this Coupledom collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Tell us about it. What's it called?
It's called Eden. And we have a lot of, are you familiar with Virgin,
Are we talking sex again now?
Yeah, I know, right? Here we go again. See, this is the problem.
Like Virgin Records or Virgin Airlines or Virgin Cola.
Yeah.
Similar to us, we're Eden. We have Eden World, which is our company. And then we have Eden Rising, which is some of the events that we do. We have Eden Sanctuary, which is the private membership club for visionary couples and evolutionary couples.
And we're about to roll out Eden Virtual because now that's all we got going for us
in this current
pandemic.
Times. Yeah.
Exactly.
Eden Virtual.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's where you can put on some goggles and
yeah, we're not quite that high tech yet.
Maybe Eden Virtue is a good, because it's the virtue of Eden, and then it's it's a play on it. I mean, not a play party, but a play.
I like it.
And some of our virtues are.
Or we could have like Eden Virgin as well, and like have a plane.
No.
That like a plane.
So
There's nothing plain about it.
So it's the Coupledom. What's different about it? Like why? What's different about having couples together and just basically having a club? I mean, what is it you do?
If you think about humanity and even nature and biology and just the whole kingdom that we live in here on Earth, relationship is at the center point of creation. And I know we're going back to sex again, but the X's and the O's, the two things that come together to literally create life. It's how we all exist here on the planet. And we believe that when we have strong, thriving relationships, then we have a strong, thriving planet. We have strong, thriving communities, all of those different strong, thriving communities. And it's a very powerful place. What we've also noticed is that when you get just couples together and there isn't pre-coupled energy or single energy in there, if we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the survival need on the bottom, if you're out there on your own and you're not in a relationship or you're single, there's a different energy. You have to sort it out for yourself. You have to take care of yourself. But when you're in a partnership, all of a sudden you feel a little bit more taken care of most of the time, especially if it's a conscious partnership.
A sacred partnership.
And so what happens is that frequency field is all of a sudden you're like, oh, my needs are met, her needs are met, and we're together in a relationship, and the couple across from us knows we're together in a relationship, and we know they're together in a relationship. And then if you add a few more of those, all of a sudden there's an energetic frequency that changes. And the feeling, since it's Feel It Fridays, the feeling state of everyone feels better. Like Markabadi, you feel better because you know I'm not going to be macking on your girl, because I actually honor your relationship. And I'm like, wow, like I love you two together and I support you two together. So all of a sudden there's
more stand for the success of your partnership.
Yeah. So we feel better as men. The women feel safer around that. And so that's a big reason why we have it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Anything you want to
say? So what yeah. What goes on? What goes on in your club?
Well, let's see.
Wouldn't you like to know?
Absolutely.
So we have 3 pillars that we really play in that we feel makes up a really solid partnership, and that's sovereignty, unity, so sovereign unity, and then community. And when we're sovereign, it's the whole concept of like, hey, do I have me?
I've got me.
Yep, I've got me.
And if I don't have me, then it's really tough to have her.
Mm-hmm.
And so if she has her, I have me, and then we can actually
have a way stronger we. So that's the sovereignty. And then the unity piece is how are we from either our full sovereign, and ideally our full sovereignty, but if we're for some reason wobbling in that, there's still this idea that he and I, or 2 people, doesn't matter what gender.
We've got each other's backs. We're looking out for each other. And
that there's an entity that when we come together, his sovereignty, my sovereignty, and then the unity, there is even a third consciousness, which is the togetherness of us.
The relationship.
The relationship consciousness, the partnership consciousness.
So again, since this is Good Friday as well, like the Father, Son, the Holy Ghost, the Holy Trinity, a lot of people would say it's a similar kind of concept.
I was just about to go there, as the notion of the Trinity. And you know, as the couples, we are creating that yin yang and the bit in the middle, as you say, that Holy Trinity.
Exactly.
I like that.
Yep.
Nice.
And then the community aspect is really about how are we interacting. I mean, obviously in many, this is the community that you're broadcasting to. A lot of us are part of really powerful, fun, amazing, supportive communities. But in the community of Coupledom specifically, we have the sense of you're able, like when we're just kind of hanging out on our own in our relationship, say one of my core wounds comes up because he just happens to trigger it because of the sacred way that relationships work. It's this matching wound, you know, sort of imago-y stuff. Then I can actually know that I'm being held by this greater community of couples that, like we said just a little while ago, are a huge stand for our relationship. So if I'm feeling completely triggered by him in the moment and feeling like, oh my God,
this happened maybe once or twice.
Never, right? Never.
13 years of being together.
I can, instead of feeling like the world is ending or that I have to hang in there and sort out everything else by myself or with just him, I know that the community has our backs, and I can lean into the brotherhood, the sisterhood, the coupledom, to really know that whatever's going on with us, it doesn't have to just be held by him or me, and we can actually leverage the ways that we need to be held. So it's a big, we call it the great holdings. The community is
nice. And I suppose it's a massive amount of safety in that you know that if you have to lean on the other members of the community, that there isn't a notion, or that the notion from the beginning is this is about shoring up and solidifying and crystallizing the relationship that I'm in at the moment, and it's not about bad-mouthing anyone. It's not like you talk to your friends and it's like, oh, this, and oh, well, he's a bastard. I always thought you should never be with him. It's like, yeah, you know, it's not bitching, but it is a collective support structure.
Yeah, and coming back to those pillars, it's like, okay, so then if we're having an issue, then in my sovereign container, what is really going on for me? Because whatever he's triggering, it's not him. I mean, he might be acting a certain way, but it's really about how am I being, what am I reacting to? And so the community can help me come back into my power. and my self-holding, self-soothing, while at the same time still holding us to work out whatever the pattern. We talk a lot about patterns, to really clear the pattern versus being like, oh, it's now I'm just the jerk because I have this thing going on. It's not the person, it's the pattern, and the pattern creates problems. But we can go into that more.
And
Does that
you
make
asked,
sense?
yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah.
And you asked what kind of things go on in the private club. All sorts of, we have events, we have gatherings, we do virtual connections,
couples councils is
councils.
a huge piece of our couples technology.
And we're working on putting together something that we can give to other people that aren't even in our community to have a couples council. But it's basically, again, that holy trinity or a hex, which is six, which is 3 couples. And when you have that space
container,
it really makes a difference. 1-on-1 or 2-on-2 is okay, but we find that when you add that extra,
the Holy Trinity once again,
it really does make triangulated support.
Interesting. And so it's the 3s and the 3s again. So maybe another 9 couples might also have another triangle on the triangle. It's like, how many triangles do you see?
Totally.
Right. Our German friends are very big into the 9.
Right.
No,
9.
Anyway,
that was quick but terrible.
Yeah, that was really
horrible
bad.
joke.
Really bad.
You
I'll be here all day.
bonus points for speed.
Yeah.
But that's what it is. We were talking. Recently has come up this notion of actually speed, and I wonder how it relates inside Eden and how you work with it in terms of time. Society often pushes people towards being quick, responding quickly. Come on, respond. And it doesn't seem to allow for that space to digest and sit within it and allow for the authentic self to observe. It kind of pushes us towards ego reaction straight away, like come up with a witty retort or answer quickly. How have you found in your work that space element is important?
I love that question. Well, what popped in immediately was this sense of, as I mentioned, the holding energy because when we're in the field of the coupledom, the nervous system actually begins to recalibrate because it can rest into, there's no either seeking, grabbing, predatory energy, which in everyday life, especially for women in particular, there's a way that we hold ourselves or protect ourselves because of just the way that the world has been thus far. And so when the nervous, and then for the men feeling like, oh God, am I safe? Can I share my emotions? Will I be thought wimpy or weak or whatever? And when they're held by the brotherhood, truly in a divine, sacred, profoundly brotherly way, their nervous systems can relax as well. And also the way they're received by the women because of the partnership commitment in the community also allows men to be able to be seen and held in a way that typically they don't get out in the world. So I would say for that, in relation to what you just asked, like I don't know if that slows us down at the level that you're talking about, but it gives us a chance to be in a different space of how we're responding to life. And that, I think, ultimately does give us a bit more of a wholeness or a completeness or a more integrated way that we can then be back out in our lives and our businesses and our families and our whatever.
Yeah, I mean, if you think of the Garden of Eden, gardens grow slow. Like they're at their own pace at their own time. So
yeah, there's that too.
or not slow, just like at the pace.
Yeah.
And so I would say that we're more in tuned to that than we are to the current world. And even though our community is filled with experts, some
Leaders,
of them
coaches,
dating experts and things like relationship experts, but many of them are, all sorts of things. There's still that space to have your own process, to go through whatever it is you need to go through, because we're all growing at different paces. The age range is 21 to 73 right now in the membership, and that's huge. Like people, because a 73-year-old is going to move at a very different pace than a 21-year-old, and if someone's been in a relationship for 3 years or 20 years, that's a different pace too, just how you process things. Like her and I were less quick to triggers than we were 5 years ago. And so, you know, I think it's a great question that you ask. And I would say that we are as organic as we can be.
Yeah, there's an allowance, right? Allowing for authentic self to be. And I think that seems to be a big key that has come up with this, you know, whole lock-in pandemic, that, you know, people are starting to notice the space between the actions because they're not packed their entire world with like action after action after action, basically avoidance after avoidance after avoidance.
Yeah.
And so suddenly they're like, and they're feeling it. One of the things I think is particularly beautiful about the Coupledom space, on honoring the sort of sacred masculine brotherhood and then the sisterhood separation and then coming together. One of the things that never sat well with me was when, like, I went to an all-boys school growing up, and I was like, what the fuck is this? You're splitting up half the population and you're training us into, and it seemed illogical to me. In the same way when, you know, I went to my first Vipassana course, the same thing, they split the men and the women up, but then everyone's there. And so it just seemed pointless. And to me, it was just like identifying something and like flashing it in your face. Like, look, you can't have this, stay away from this, here it is, stay away. And I'm like, look, just fucking, I'm fine doing it. But what I'm liking about the Eden notion is this DNA swirl, like the Kundalini swirl, that where you have the Ida as completely independent from the Pingala, the yin and the yang. But then at some point there's a crossover and a unification, and that's where you got the chakra points at the unification. And then there's an independence again when they flow off and then they come back round. So I think it feels like a real beautiful a synergy of nature to have this both separation and union. Exactly. And I think that's what I felt from the Eden flow.
Yep, sovereign unity.
Yep, sovereign unity.
And it's perfect
unity. Yeah.
Container of community.
Yep.
And so how are you finding that the community is responding to, because obviously, you know, if you're in a lockdown scenario and you're locked down with a couple, it's a lot easier than if you're on your own.
Actually.
Well, for the Eden community, I think, because we're a little bit slightly deeper into some certain experiences and conversations, but for many of the world that is maybe not used to that, it's really tricky. But yes, I mean, one of the things that we've been saying to our community is you have a advantage because you're literally with your beloved, so you can't hug or be touched by the world, and people that are not in partnership right now, I can only imagine just the like touch starvation that they might be feeling, you know, not being able to get that from somebody if they truly are on lockdown and actually obeying, you know. And whereas we're telling everybody, like, make sure if your kids, your beloved, touch, hug, hold, now is the time. I mean, always, but particularly like really, really feel and love and physically have some connection and closeness, because the rest of the world doesn't have that. We're actually being told, I read an article that even handshaking might be a way of the past, that they're recommending no more handshakes from here on out.
I'm actually glad about that person.
Yeah, well, what's the handshake? Much prefer a hug and a big kiss on the lips, you know. You get handshakes.
That'll be interesting to see how politicians navigate that one.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Biden will be happy. So with regards to, like, let's say couples are going through, you know, rocky times, what sort of advice do you give them? Like right now at this stage, and we've all seen that meme going around, the great one about there's a guy on camera and he goes, someone's interviewing and says, you have to be locked down, you know, for a month or something. And do you A, choose to be with your wife and kids, or do you B? And he just goes, B. before the answer comes. Very funny. It's very funny. But the point is, what sort of how can you what do you recommend to couples who are finding this trying now?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
I would come back to the sovereignty piece, big time. I mean, one of the things that Rono and I have the benefit of having, because we've been friends for a very long time before we became romantic. I mean, we grew up together. We've known each other most of our lives, actually.
Mm.
And we call that the friendship box, right? Because when there's a expectation and pheromones and hormones and all the stuff flying around when you're in a sexual relationship, it can cloud things. Or when there's expectation or patterning, and then of course adding on stressors of life and children and proximity and new patterning, right? There's just a lot that can happen in that. So if the couple can come back into hopefully they like each other. I mean, a lot of couples are finding they don't like each other. They were able to get by not liking each other because they'd only have pockets of time together. So, but regardless, for the conscious couples, I'd say, you know, if you're having a tough time, come back into your friendship box or put yourself in a friendship box and just be like, all right, who can I be as my own sovereign being? How can I be a buddy or a friend to my beloved? And really just go into like, let's take all that other stuff off the table, which can add so much confusion to the field, and just be friends. And I would even say for those that maybe you're finding you don't like your partner and you're questioning your entire relationship. I don't know if anybody that caliber would be watching this, but maybe they are. I don't know. It's really important to make sure that you got you, that you take care of you, and you don't do it in a mean or snarky or you know, put the relationship on the chopping block way, but really hold the place of what do you need in order to come back into your full self. So whether that be self-care, exercise, you know, taking time out, making a little space for you somewhere in your home that you know you can be not bothered for periods of time, be in communication with those who are going to be impacted by it. But I think the sovereignty piece is so key, because usually it's when you don't have you that it becomes really trying in the partnership. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. And drastic times call for drastic measures. And one of the things that I think is important is creating separation. A lot of people are finding that they used to go to the office and now they come home and now they're all together the whole time. And so Sierra and I, even though we love each other and have a great relationship, we spend Monday nights in separate beds, like on purpose to create more space between us intentionally. And so things like that, like sleep in separate beds for every now and again.
Not because you're mad, but because you actually sovereignty piece.
Because the distance, the space creates the longing, creates the desire, opens up things more. And then also we're very big on contracts, like literally written down specific contracts, because a lot of what happens it's breakdown in communication. And if it's written down and you both signed it and it's like, it's right here, buddy. It says it right here that I'm not going to yell at you and you're yelling at me right now. Okay, cool. Sorry, I didn't mean, you know, whatever it is. So we write written contracts with each other. So it can be with the whole household. When I was an elementary school teacher, one of the things that I learned very early on was that if you tell the kids what the rules are, you're gonna have a hard time with them. But if you make the rules with the kids, everyone's gonna follow them. So similarly in the home, like recreate the contract as a household. If it's not just your partner, but with the kids and everything else, like how do we all want to treat each other? So get really clear and
baseline operating agreement.
Yeah. And then I would strongly recommend having some sort of yoga, meditation, hiking, like if you can go to, like, create that as a family, as a couple, like together or separate. So, because if you're not getting movement, you're not moving the energy, you're not like centering yourself, you're just going to constantly blow up. So those are the things I would recommend.
Nice. I like that. So there has to be buy-in, obviously, from all parties involved. And maybe there are situations where people have found themselves in their couple relationships before the lockdown, where the agreements have just kind of happened, like without the agreement. It's just habits have just kind of formed as to how they live, and they've never discussed it or come up with it. So that's, I think, great reflection.
And I want to say you brought something up that has importance too, like the pre-pandemic patterns, right? That were potentially unconscious, or even if they were conscious, we're being asked right now to really change who we are as a humanity on so many levels. So now is a great time to recraft what it is that you want your relationship to look like.
Right.
What do you need? What is a sovereign place?
A relationship vision.
A relationship vision. So now is the perfect and the best time, and probably one of the most important things that we can be doing together for the sake of this and the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll add one more thing too. We were talking with a couple the other day, and they had realized that they've been together 5 years. They have, or maybe 5 or 6 years. They have a 3 or 5 year old girl, and they just went into creating their relationship without, and like sacrificing themselves over and over again because things just happened. And now they're looking at like, I don't even know if we want to be together. Why, if we even like each other, because they created this whole scenario of they really did like each other. But then because of all the circumstances of life, they're like, oh, I have a kid. That means I must be the provider. I have to do this. I have to do this. I have to do this. And they didn't even have a conversation around
So
it.
re-examining the indoctrinated beliefs and ways of being that have been put on us by society or our upbringing that is probably not serving or working. And that is a huge part of what might be the challenge.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. And I mean, with regards to this, you know, obviously the notion of the option is re-examine, redefine, reassess and realign. Thank you. Or break up. So, you know, I mean, a lot of religions out there put this very much, and legally, this sort of difficulty on couples separating. They make it hard. What's your take on this notion of, you know, do you cut and run when, like, at what point is it more authentic to say, you know what, I just win. We were together for a reason that's now totally, I'm lost on the reason why we were together and blah, blah, blah. So like at what point, how much energy do you put into saving the relationship versus realizing that your authentic self doesn't connect?
Okay.
And then you can go.
Yeah.
I'm actually dealing with this right now with a friendship where it's just like, how many more times do I have to blah, 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 blah. Right. And the question is, if you're doing the work, and there's a real fine line between spiritual saran wrap or bypassing and actually doing the work. I would say if there's zero trigger, and not that you're numb, but there's that you're just like, wow, like this is just, you can just see it clearly. Mm-hmm. That's a perfect place to cut and not run. Just, I would say, you know,
evolve the relationship, transform it,
shift it up.
Get out.
But if you're still triggered, you're still like, wow, then that means you're the issue, and you're the one that needs to do the work.
So hold on, what you're saying is if there's emotional charge within your being about the relationship, then you should stay until you're arduous.
You're still the problem.
Well, that there's work to be, I would say that there's work to be done. That you don't work it out with that person, you're most likely going to find yourself in the same situation with some other person later.
Yeah, right.
Wherever you go,
I like that. Yeah. Yeah, it's like do the work now or later, but either way, the work has to be done.
Right. And we come.
If it's, I just want to say, if it's abusive, I want to be very mindful in how to say that, because if you're being hurt and it's clear, like those are extreme cases. But if it's still a loving relationship, even if
you're in conflict a lot,
like then that's what I would say. What we're gonna add to it?
I forget now what I was going to add to it. Hold on.
It's probably good. Wait for it.
Wait for it.
I'll keep talking. I'm sure it'll come up. In the notion, you know, I was finding this interesting is how do you find that the mathematics of coupledom repeat the cycles from parents and what have you, and what's your kind of approach to that? I mean, I want to share that, you know, recently I noticed that, you know, I was talking to Z or whatever, and, you know, she's got all these boxes and crap around the house from her collection of stuff. And, you know, and I'm like, look, let's just clear it. Let's clear. And you know, we do some clearing, and it's a little bit of clearing. And I'm looking at everything that's left and going, all right, come on, let's do it. And she wants me to, like, say, well done on all the stuff we've just done. And I'm looking at all the stuff that's still to come. And I find that this is a like, it's never good enough pattern that I got from my mum, and that my mum got from her mum, the feeling of it never being good enough. And I had this realization that I'm doing the same fucking thing, that I'm repeating. In my attempt to improve the world, I am repeating the very thing that I'm most afraid of, which is that I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough for my mum, and my mum was afraid of she's not good enough for her mum, and that cycle. So I suppose my question is, to what degree do you think that diving into the old patterns of parenthood is helpful in coupledom? And to what degree do you maybe play in the archetypes of mummy or daddy, like playing those archetypes of like, okay, right, I'm daddy now. Okay, right, okay, I'm the child now. Okay, like, in what way reliving those archetypal flows do you think is helpful?
Well, there's a couple of answers in that question.
And
there was a lot of questions.
Yeah, it's a lot of questions, exactly.
Yeah, good luck.
I'll speak to, I mean, obviously, I think in general, it is important to recognize, when you recognize that you're in a familial pattern, then, I mean, a problem well stated is a problem half solved, as they say, right? And awareness is the only thing that if we keep bringing our awareness to something, can we shift it? So while maybe digging into the healing forgiveness work that you need to do in order to break the pattern of what you're noticing with mom or dad and really do some, you know, lineage healing and excavating is important to, I think, to some degree. I'm not, in Eden, what's so profound about the coupledom of Eden is we get to see those patterns play out, not just in this beloved relationship, but in all of the relationship beloved. So like in our couples council, our core couples council, we see all the different ways that the family patterns start to play out. So we talk about like the identification of the pattern is even more important than what the person is doing, because we're starting to see there's certain patterns that are typical in any relationship, no matter what stage or who the person is or what their upbringing is, because they are a world human pattern, right? And so in that regard, we can use some of what you're talking about to excavate, but you know, I'm even hearing your kind of, what you were even defining was felt like constellation work to some degree, or like, right, like taking on that. We may offer experiences from experts in our community that can do that when they see certain things that are really up, that can, like, all right, we can clear that using these particular techniques or technologies or methodologies. But as a whole, I think that the key is really the more we can recognize the pattern showing up, not just here, because it's so easy to be like, you, right?
Which usually means her.
Which means me, right? The whole three fingers pointing back at you. You can start to be humbled and see more of the whole picture of where your pattern is, and then you're more receptive to being able to shift it. Because, and I'll say this last thing, so many times in our community, we'll say, you know, Ron will be like, I've been trying to tell you this for years, and I can so hear it from a different brother or a different sister, because they can see it, and I don't have the same charge when it comes, you know. And so that, and if more than one couple or part of the couple's showing it or telling it to me, it can really land, versus it's just your problem, you know, whatever. So
I think it is important to look at your familial wounds, because or familiar characteristics, because that is what is from familial
and familiar.
that is what is driving all of us. I have the gift of spending a month to 3 months every summer with my family. And specifically my mom and dad. And I specifically, about 6 years ago, realized this. I was reading David Data at the time, The Way of the Superior Man. And it was all about, I'm probably not saying this quite right, but your father needs to die energetically for you to actually be the man that you are, so that you're not tied, like the tithe of what you're talking about. And I am a much better and a much more centered man now. and you can ask her, like, and she even gets triggered by my father. Like, it's like, if you have the opportunity to go in there and do the work with the actual parents, like, you can transcend very fast. And if you don't have that, there's lots of tools that you can use to remove or move that or shift that. But I think it's super important, because that is that plus your relationship lineage of how you were in the past relationship and all the baggage that you're bringing in from that to this, and the hurts and this and the misunderstandings. Those are probably the two biggest components to people not being able to connect, even though they might be perfect for one another, but there's too much baggage bringing into it.
Yeah.
What's the first steps to do with your baggage? You just sort of have a big bonfire outside.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
Have a yard sale.
Unpack
it all and sell it off. I think for me, one of the things, I think forgiveness is probably a huge element to it. And a simple exercise that you can do is picture a light bulb in the center of a room, and enter yourself, your consciousness, into that space, and then enter that other person that you're seeking forgiveness from or want to forgive, and have them do that. Like, this is all in your mind or in your space, and then just have a dialogue back and forth between it. And then you can write this down. I recommend journaling about it as well, and just the different elements of forgiveness, and see what comes up and see what's there. It's usually that there's something that you need to forgive within yourself, because I'm amazed at how much I still think I'm a certain way from how I was as a child. But when I asked my mother, like, I thought I was a terror. And she's like, no, you were so great, so easy. And I was like, oh shit. Like, I have this whole story that, like, I was a terror, like, with everyone. But it was like, nope, you were great. It's like, oh.
I'm gonna ask your siblings.
My brother, definitely, I was a terror too. But we've worked that out, and we have a great relationship.
So this is something that it brings up for me, something that Amanda Sage said in her interview. You know Amanda Sage, the visionary artist?
Yeah, she's amazing.
So she was talking about how the art was like a prayer, and that most people, she went on to talk about most people talking about prayer as like usually asking for something, like putting out a request, but actually a prayer is becoming vulnerable and allowing, like, to give away your gold. This notion of the forgiveness, what came up for me is the notion that forgiveness isn't just you're forgiving them, but also they're forgiving you, and that you're forgiving you. There's this kind of cyclical pattern of it's never one way. It's always both. Like, you know, again with the pointing, it's always both. It's always this spiral pattern of
exactly. It's a dance.
It's a dance, and so, you know, because a lot of people have a charge over the word forgiveness because they're thinking they're giving something up, when actually you can gain something by forgiving.
Which is the word alone, for giving, right? And unforgiveness, right? You're forgiving, you're giving grace over to, but it's really, it's your grace to give. Like, you know what I mean? It's this, and this regenerative, symbiotic, energetic. Yeah.
The notion that it feeds you to give up something, to give away your gold, as Amanda puts it. And interestingly in the coupledom, you get to, with couples, you get to witness this giving up, reward, coming back cycle, kind of like right there, like in a little in a little container.
Totally. I mean, if you think about it, the next time you're out and about, which is probably not for a while, but if you see it on TV or if you see it in the grocery store, like, if you
go and pick up chocolate.
Yeah. If you ever witness a couple in love, like when they it's something spectacular when you get to see that connection between two people. It's the same thing that you can create within yourself with forgiveness, or with working through grief, or any sort of charge, whether it's perceived negative or positive. They're all charges, and a negative charge needs a positive charge to move it along, and a positive charge needs a negative charge to move it along, or it just sits out in limbo and doesn't move. And so they're always moving somewhere or another. Things are always evolving, always changing and shifting and growing. And the more you can be a witness to those spaces between all the relationships that we have, everything is a relationship.
It's true. It is. Yeah.
That witness, I mean, again, it's like the Father, Son, Holy Ghost. It's the bit in the middle of the yin and the yang. The witness seems to be the third magic point. And, you know, my first teacher said to me, the smallest number is 3. The smallest number in existence is 3. And a lot of spiritual teachings talk about that as a notion that, you know, first you've got to have the comparison to have any identity. You know, hot without cold is not hot. It's just, it's just like, it's not even a temperature. Just, and then, you know, this third, the observer, seems key in like acceptance of the polarities without getting caught in the game of how to make this better, how to make it perfect. Oh, we're getting there. Oh, we'll soon be in the perfect. We're really getting close. And it's, for me, it's that same thing like the boxes. Like, there'll always be fucking boxes to do, metaphorically, right? There's always something to do.
Oh yeah, never ends.
Never ends. And that observation of accepting the dance of polarity seems to be where the magic of happiness lies, within that observable neutrality of those things happening, the push and the pull. So anyway, I think it's beautiful, that work. Yeah. Did something come up for you?
Well, when you said happiness, I'm almost like more than even happiness, because happiness is an inside job regardless, but I would almost say the homeostasis, which can lead to more capacity for happiness.
Resonance and harmony.
Yeah, resonance, harmony, you know, that.
Right.
Like attract, things like that.
Like a what?
Like attracts like.
And also opposites attract.
Yep.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Again, no matter where you look, there is this 2 sides. There's always at least 2, and then the observer of both those 2. That's the Maya, the great illusion that keeps spiraling. Wonderful. Well, thanks for coming on. Tell us about your tell us about Eden. How do people get involved? What's the scenarios? What's going on?
Yeah.
Well, right now we have we're moving to a virtual event. We've got it coming up May 1st through the 3rd, and typically to come to a live in-person experience, you got to be nominated by somebody, and to get into our community, you would go to EdenIsRising.com.
And we'll update that today, literally, so that you can find the link to go to Eden virtual.
But if you, happening. Yeah, and so if you just, if we haven't updated it, but whatever, who knows when you're going to watch this, and we'll hopefully get it done.
It'll be done today.
All right, nice. I love it. On the spot. There's also a Facebook group called We Are Eden. And that's a great place. So just, if anybody, if you're asking to come in, just reference, Markabadi. And we know that you've come through Markabadi, your community here. And that's a great place to just touch in and be part of the extended community. And then you'll know about the virtual event. We'll have things up by next week for registration. And then from there, when we can actually gather again, which is hopefully we'll have that possibility for the fall, which is what we're planning. Then we can have a deeper conversation with anybody that's interested in coming to that and having that experience.
Great.
Eden.
And are you looking? Say again.
EdenIsRising.com.
Yes. EdenIsRising.com. And are you looking at doing any online courses? With the virtual stuff now, like workshop type courses for couples, and even for people who are calling in couples. Who are calling in a coupledom, who have maybe noticed patterns in their life where they want to call in a more sacred union partner. like
we won't
online courses
do much stuff with that, but our community will.
Our community has a plethora of resources. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a couple of free guides that people can check out. Like we have a sacred space practice, and
We're happy to get you that link too.
yeah, and so there's some really good, and also we have this epic Saturday night sex, magic, and rituals guide that we've written that also helps like figure out how to keep the juiciness and intentionality and really sacredness alive in your partnership. So we can give you some links for that. Off the top of my head, I wouldn't remember what they are, but
yeah,
in there. And then, yeah, our community is doing a lot of stuff right now, actually. And in the We Are Eden Facebook group, we're posting as many things that the community's putting on, a lot of them free, like our friends Gabby and Raj, who have relationship fun and games every Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific tonight. They're doing a 30-minute Facebook Live on really how to like work through conflict and through this quarantine. And so that's just one example, but we have many. Last weekend, another Betsy and Matt were doing a dance party and an actual like sacred touch workshop. So there's a lot of things coming out of the community specifically that We Are Eden is a great place to get in and find out about those things.
And that's the Facebook group.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyone can join. It's a closed group at the moment.
You have to be in a committed partnership and
committed partnership. Right now we don't have much for singles. The only thing I'm doing for singles, well, any woman, is I have my pussy empowerment stuff, my reclamation work, which is really about, you know, coming back into sovereignty with truly honoring our divinity as women. So I have that whole realm as well, which is super helpful in the partnership realm, because if women can honor their divinity and fall madly in love with the majesty of their sacred portal, the world is going to change. And
that's very important work, because it seems to be that's what society has disregarded for at least a couple of thousand years. Yes. They destroyed the oracle and burnt the muse and that sort of stuff.
Exactly. Exactly.
So great. And where can people find out about your work with that?
So for that, they can either go, there's two different links. They can go to lifestylized.com. So LIFESTYLIZED, lifestylized.com. And there's some links from there. Or they can check out secretsoftheyoniverse.com. So secrets of the universe.
Yep. That's a cool site name.
.com.
That's great. I think Secrets of the Universe, and it's easier to spell as well.
Yes, exactly.
For sure.
Even though it's twice as long, it's still easiest to spell, because stylized.
I know, like stylized. I know.
Yeah. It would be spelled with an S in England. That's the other problem.
Right.
You don't have Z's in the middle of words. Yes, we're evolved on that one. Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for coming on. I'm just about to bring Ragini on, and so you can say hello to her. She's very funny and brilliant. So thanks so much for coming on. Eden Project is wonderful. I look forward to hearing and seeing a lot more of the magic and the magistry. Magic street.
Like
yes.
Yeah.
And I think, do you know Miracula? Have you met Miracula?
No.
You should check her out on Monday. She's on my show at 3. She's phenomenal. She's like a wordsmith, creative wordsmith.
Oh, is this Michaela? Yeah.
Michaela Miracula.
Okay, yeah, we know her. Yeah,
she's awesome.
She's epic.
Amazing. Anyway,
wordsmith. She's a
word witch, goddess of
word witch.
Yeah.
Word witch. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, and thank you. And that's it from me. Friday. Again, as Dad tells me, I have to plug my book. I've got a book, bookevolve.com. Blessings. Stay safe. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you to my guests, Rono and Sierra. Remember, it is all about sacred presence. Be brave. You've got it. It's all there for you. Just don't need to distract yourself. Be with it. You've got it. Thank you. Much love. See you all soon.